The beauty of America is that you can celebrate both being a proud American and being proud of your heritage, whatever it might be. But, I did a documentary in 2013 called The Muslims Are Coming. It's a comedy doc. People can find it on, it was on Netflix for a while. It's on iTunes. But we went to the South and talked to people all over the country. And a lot of them said, you got to be American. And that clip's like in the movie. And they were generations of white Americans, which I said, well, what is your heritage? They go, it doesn't even matter. It was like 5 generations ago. Well, for me, it's much more immediate. My grandparents are from Sicily. My dad's an immigrant. I mean, he passed away, but he's an immigrant. The accent is there. The cultures, the intertwining of the cultures. To me, America is still at its best.
A melting pot.
Right, a melting pot that brings people from different places to come here to dream of a far better life than you could ever have in your own country. So I am so appreciative of this country for accepting my grandparents and my dad, and which is why I defend this country against the bigots who want to redefine what this nation is about.
Yeah, I always embrace, like you, I didn't grow up. I didn't visit the Middle East until I was an adult. I didn't,
Me too.
And I remember growing up very, the food was great. The colorful language was great, and and some of the humor was a lot better for me than just Shecky Green or whatever. But I didn't know whether I should feel guilty or happy with the heritage because of what I experienced outside of the home. It was always a bit of I wanted to grow up just being, hey, I'm just a guy. I'm just a regular guy. But I do think that after 9/11, after 9/11, it made me revisit my past to see where I had been treated differently and hadn't really thought about it.
Interesting.
And so so going forward, let's take the last few days of what's happened in Afghanistan. Do you think there's going to be a backlash against Arabs or Muslim Americans because of this?
I hope not. First of all, Afghan people are not Arabs, but that doesn't matter.
What are you trying to do? Introduce logic into this? These are people who think that you can cure the pandemic with Clorox. So I'm not
objective, and that's from their leader. And Afghanistan is not in the Middle East, not the way we explain the Middle East. That's generally countries that are people of Middle Eastern heritage, from Arab to Iranian, but that doesn't matter. I don't know. I think there'll only be a backlash if there's terrorism that comes from that region back here on our soil, or even in Europe, because then it's used by right-wing politicians to gin up fear. You look at polling. I mean, 70% of Americans want us to leave, even including a majority of Republicans in most polls. It's just the way it fell that was so a colossal failure. You can't get around it. And there's a lot of people here that you can point fingers at I'm really partisan, but being objective. It goes from Trump last year to making a deal where he forced the Afghan government to release 5,000 prisoners against what they wanted, to the idea of giving a date certain for pulling our troops out so that Taliban gets ready, to then Biden intelligence failure. And it's not his fault personally, but at the end of the day, he is president. No one told him that, hey, if we leave, they're going to take Kabul in a matter of weeks. He would have said, we're not leaving, but this is where we are. Plus the troops not fighting, plus the U.S. military overhyping how good our troops were, how good the troops were to get promotions, and lots of money flowing there. You need an investigation. And unfortunately for Republicans, this gives them a valid demand for investigations for a Benghazi type hearing. But there's a valid concern here about the military, about where did the money go, the intelligence failure, and that to learn from it. But they're going to bastardize it. They're going to turn it into a horrific shit show instead of making it a real sincere effort to understanding what happened.
Well, that's because that's what our politicians in this country do. They're remarkably well versed at creating shit shows.
Yep.
Like a hot tub of shit. That's what they like to do.
They soak in it like a pig. They enjoy it.
So, they swim in it.
They swim in. They spit a backstroke while spitting shit into the air. Exactly.
That's exactly right. And when I look at what happened the last few days, you talk about really poor intelligence. Did you ever see the movie Team America: World Police?
Yeah, sure.
Bad intelligence. Bad.
There's a lot of questions to go around, and we're already, you can see on Political World on Twitter, if you're looking at that, it's instantly go to your corner. It was all Trump's fault. It's all Biden's fault.
Yeah.
Some people in the middle going, why didn't the Afghanistan people fight harder? Which is a very valid question. To the deeper question is, how many of the Afghanistan people actually agree with the Taliban? Maybe not the harshness of it all, but some of the idea that did they not fight because they were bribed or they didn't want to die? Or did they go like, hey, you know, the Taliban, if I'm not a woman, then my life isn't that much different. For women, it's horrific.
Yeah.
It's un-Islamic. It's an insult to Islam. As I said, as a Muslim, what they do to women. There's no Muslim country in the world that does that. They've literally fabricated their own religion at this point, the Taliban. That's not Islam to say women can't.
Explain that a little bit. The differences between the Taliban and Islam.
Look, and I just wrote about this, in Islam, in the Quran, it says men and women are supposed to be treated equally. Are they in the real world? No. But then again, are women treated equally in our country? No. This is part of the struggle. Secondly, it says women in the Quran should be educated. In Saudi, women have been going to school since the 1970s. If Saudi's been doing it through the 70s, folks, it says something. The Taliban not allowing women to be educated, not allowed to leave the house.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because just the way you said it, Saudi.
I'm like, come on. Saudi's been hideous in their oppression of women.
Yeah.
They've allowed women because the Quran says women should read is like the first thing in the Quran. And it's not about believing in the details of the faith. It's the premise of the faith that men and women are supposed to be treated equally. There are things in the Quran that are alarming in the way they talk about gender disparity. There are things in the Bible.
That's the Bible too.
The Bible has the same thing. So my point is, it's the application. The Taliban, if most Muslim countries were doing what the Taliban did, not allowing them to leave the house or educated or work, you'd say, well, that's Islam. There are Muslim women in the Jordanian military who are officers now. In Pakistan, they had a prime minister who was elected, Benazir Bhutto. There's been countries, Bangladesh and other Muslim countries, they've elected women as their leaders. My point is, when you hear the Taliban and what they're doing, it's not even an interpretation of Islam. It's truly a fabricated interpretation because no one else doing what they're doing.